Welcome to the 2020 Summer Series. I'm Jack Fallon from Team 5199, the Robot Dolphins from outer space, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. Throughout this week, this Summer Series will feature top teams from Southern California in a variety of workshops. Topics such as sponsorships, machining, and recruitment will be covered throughout the week. But today, we will be discussing kickoff and the way different teams approach it. We are welcomed by panelists from Team 3309, the Firebots, Team 3476, Code Orange, and Team 5199, the Robot Dolphins from outer space. Would you care to introduce yourself, panelists?
Hello, I'm Mike Nelson from 3309.
I'm Ian Jung from Team 3476, Code Orange.
And I'm Ali Aruji from Team 5199.
Thank you. If you guys have any questions, feel free to start dropping them in the chat. But right now, we're just going to start with a few prepared questions we have. So can you guys each give us a rundown of your typical kickoff day and how you approach it?
At 3309, we usually start off by having breakfast with, one second, I apologize for this. We attend the live kickoff. We socialize with some of the other teams that we usually bring over, or some teams that come to watch live kickoff with us. Then we assemble in the classroom, watch the game video a couple times, and read the rules together in silence. That way we can further get familiarized with the rules, and then we usually do little quizzes to help us. We review the quiz results with the whole team and then focus on the challenging areas of the rules. And then we'll read that together, pointing out significant things that we may find or errors of question. And then we have a big discussion of what possible actions that we may take. And then we form groups to make, to help us with what we need to do. We break into groups to identify the robot actions and tasks and necessary to complete. And each group will present their findings and the whole team will discuss. And then we'll, by the end of the day, have a big consensus on what we need to do. And then we'll make it into strategies or alliance-based scoring analysis. We usually have create pre-made bots, quote unquote, to give us all right, robot did this, this, and this, and then we will be able to say, all right, what should each robot be able to do? How do we strategize with this robot? And then we'll make a demand wish prefer list of requirements that will allow the robot alliance to maximize the match score. And then we'll identify any of the requirements by the different phases of each game.
For 5199, we actually do a lot of similar things as 3309 just said. For us, at the beginning of the day, we actually split off into two groups. Our team, president, vice president, and all the new members of the team, every single new member interested in FRC, goes over to 3309's high school where they host the live kickoff. This is, for us, a really good opportunity to have all the new members interact with other FRC teams and kind of get the full experience. As for all our advanced leads and team members who've been on the team for a couple of years now, they all stay at our own high school where we wait for the kickoff to go live online. There, the whole team watches the video as many times as they need and start going through the game manual bit by bit. And these are all our advanced students, so they're the ones who are able to fully understand the game manual in itself. Once everyone meets back together at our high school, we have food, everyone eats, all the parents are there too, so it's an event that includes everyone on our team, and we hope to have a good momentum going forward into the rest of the season. There we try to include as many people as we can and start having our big strategy meetings going over what our need, demand, and want lists are for the season. And then from there we start, we make every single person on our team read this strategy manual, and from there on, we start thinking about designs we want to do, and from that first day, even sometimes we start prototyping, depending on what the game is, and looking maybe at past robots and going through pretty much all like the past 10 years of FRC and looking if there's anything we can pull from any of our own robots or any of the other robots we know of. But yeah, that's pretty much the rundown of it.
Our team is also pretty similar to 3309. We, as a whole team, we go and attend the live event kickoff, and then we discuss a little among ourselves in little groups, not like assigned groups, just like friends talking to each other. Then we all grab lunch on our way back to our workshop, where we read the game manual as a team and we go through every rule that we think might be important, then generate all the specifications for everything we can do in the game, all the way down to like, can we drive? And we put everything as a wish for demand. And then on an ideal day, we can sometimes even begin like getting our napkin sketches done and maybe even prototyping on our first day.
Yeah, so going along with the designing and prototyping, when do you guys start designing and prototyping? And also, as kind of a secondary question, I know at Team 5199, we really reference old teams' years' design and kind of do a lot of research into that. How do previous years' designs and robots play into this?
Here at 3309, we try to avoid designing the robot until most of the students have had a chance to think about the concepts we could use. We also try to avoid introducing ideas from outside the team until at least a few days after kickoff to allow all students to explore crazy and innovative concepts without the cloud of community acceptance, quote unquote. As a team, 3309's previous year's designs are an indication of our team's abilities and experience. They can be used when evaluating a concept to determine how much risk is involved in developing and incorporating filler elements into the robot design. Likewise, eventually, other teams' design concepts are evaluated and integrated into our prototyping design plans if they are within the capabilities of the team and the risk level is acceptable.
For us, it's more of a natural approach on when we start designing and prototyping. It depends on the season, but most of the time we start at least thinking about our designs and what we are trying to look into from the first and second days. And then from then on, even within the first and second days, we start prototyping, start trying to bring our ideas to life, because it makes it way easier for more of the newer members to kind of get a grasp of everything. And even for them, we have different tools to use for prototyping. And additionally, like you said, for previous teams and years, our more advanced members, that's what they are kind of in charge of. They go through all the videos, all the game manuals, and everything they've released. And if there's like a specific game that we tie parallels to, like for this game, Stronghold, the same ball, same system, we looked a lot at that game and we saw what we could take from that and what worked and what didn't. And we kind of applied that in what we ended up prototyping in those couple days.
For us, we don't as much like split into advanced teams that like the experience and the inexperience. Almost every discussion that we have is as a full team. The only time that a line is drawn between like people who have been on the team and understand stuff better than the newer students is when we begin our napkin sketches and prototyping groups. Then we have a leading a group of newer students helping to make a napkin sketch. And when we start prototyping, it's how many ideas are there, how clear are the ideas. If there's a lot of ideas that are just coming out, then we sometimes start prototyping really soon when people are confused about how are we going to get this accomplished, and sometimes it takes longer to get to the prototyping stage because we napkin sketch for longer and we bring out more ideas.
Thank you. We actually have a question from the chat from Ali. And the question is, what is your stopping point for day one?
So for what we tend to do as a team, it depends on the game. All the 3 different games I've been a part of have had much different approaches than what we've done as a team. For this, a lot of times we try to get as much done as we can. We usually go until around like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock p.m. So it's a 12-hour day for the most part for us. But a lot of that is also bonding, and we like to end off with having dinner together and kind of being in the community. But where we kind of draw the line as far as like prototyping and design wise is wherever like we kind of are at that point, and then we're like, okay, that's it for today. Just try to think about it over the night, and if you have any other ideas, tomorrow we'll start where we left off. So that's kind of the approach we take. We kind of have a set the time in advance, so we don't like put too much burden on the families and like students on that first day. But we kind of do as much as we can because we want to maximize on our kickoff day.
At 3009, we usually go through as much as we can, just like Ollie said, and we usually end at around 9. But it's more or less like feel free to leave when you feel tired, or like leave when you feel like you've worked enough, or something along those lines. And we always have dinner together, even during the season. When people are there, we should have dinner at around 6:30-ish, and then we get as much done as possible under our demand, wish, prefer, on those lines.
Like Ali said, it really does depend on the game for us. We go until 9. We work as much as we can. We try to get as many napkin sketches done. That's normally where we are. But like I said, depending on the game, we sometimes get farther. Sometimes we don't even get to there. Oftentimes, near 9, it's normally only the more experienced students and more committed students that are staying. So there are some really good discussions that happen later amongst the kids who are really trying to figure out the best ways to do things.
Thank you. We have another question from the chat from Angel. I guess this is a little shorter question. How long do you spend on design and prototyping?
Well, on our team, the prototyping process never stops. It's always, is there a new design? Prototype it first. And we're prototyping throughout the entire season. Every time there's a new design, it's always prototype made out of wood or scrap metal before we do any kind of CAD to make sure that we know it's going to work.
Yeah, like Hayden said, we kind of have the same philosophy when it comes to that. Like for this season, we were prototyping like 3.5 weeks into the season, because it was the first shooter game for a lot of us too, that were on the team. And because of that, we wanted to make sure we got it down exactly right. So we'd rather spend the time on prototyping rather than trying to fix our CAD last minute, fix our robot, and try to make up for what we did in prototype. So in that regards, we spend as much time as we needed to get it perfect for whatever we wanted to accomplish and our goals for the season.
We usually, prototypes usually start by the end of the first week, and sometimes carries through to week 3 and even week 4 if there's a high challenging action needed for the game, such as like the shooter game that we have. We spent a lot of time with our climber and shooter that I know of, and we got those down to a T when we were practicing.
And we also have another question from the chat. Keep the questions in the chat rolling. We love it. From Stuart Lee, what are your strategies for getting new and first-time FRC members involved early in the process?
Well, at 3309, we usually hold a mock kickoff a few weeks before the actual kickoff to help the students get a familiarity with what we do at kickoff and how we do it. We usually pick a previous game that the students don't know the game that we're going to choose. So we choose a game, and then we do basically a kickoff for that game, and then it helps the new students and even old ones get back into the swing of the robotics season and the kickoff.
In what our team also does is we start preparing before kickoff, like Mike said as well. What we did this past year was we split everyone off in groups, and we started with these group projects that were designed after robotics like mechanisms in FRC that have been used, and it kind of put all students, no matter how new or advanced they were, in a position where I had to design ideas and kind of start on prototyping, start on CADing, and start kind of putting all the pieces that they're going to need to put together on kickoff day. And then, like I said, on our kickoff day, what we do is in our strategy meeting and our design meetings, we have everyone in the same room. So that also allows them to hear the different ideas and kind of feel more comfortable to speak up and work together to kind of give their ideas on the table, no matter how like preliminary it is. We kind of accept everything, because a lot of the times we do end up picking some things that might not be as conventional, and those usually do come from the newer members.
So on our team, as I mentioned when we were talking about the kickoff day, the new kids are involved by the experienced kids, like in groups with them, and they in small groups, and they say like, what are your ideas? And they encourage the newer kids to say their ideas. And in a smaller group, it's often easier for them to explain their ideas and just on napkin sketches and write down, what about this? And that the experienced kids can help draw out the ideas of the new kids so that everyone is involved.
Another question from the chat. We have a question from Tara, and it is, when do you begin CADing?
The CAD comes when the prototypes are done. When we know what design we have, that's when the CAD starts. And sometimes that's a little later than we like, but we try to get it around week 2-ish.
So for us, it's not a matter of like when CAD usually starts week 1, like the first 3 days into it. We start with whatever we can, whether that's the drive base or whatever ideas that we have in place. But then when CAD ends is a whole nother story, because like we said, we prototype very late in the season. So a lot of those ideas that are developed later on have to be CADed before we actually can machine them. So where CAD ends, we usually try to aim for like week 3. But that's usually a luxury that usually doesn't happen. So we just try to get our CAD members on it as we can, and try to push to have it as soon as possible. But again, it's a lot, especially for changing ideas late into the season.
At 3009, we usually begin CADing start week 1 with like the robot frame, and then we get the drive components, and we also use create a spatial allocation model to reserve space for mechanisms. Like when we're creating the robot, if we have room for like maybe, all right, let's say we want this, we can add room for that later on if we need to.
Okay, we have another great question from the chat. Keep the chat questions rolling. It's from Rick Uva. Second question from Rick. Do you disassemble your past robots? And if not, are they helpful in prototyping?
For us, we like to make a prototype robot. So we basically make the entire robot out of wood. And in order to do that, we use past robots' drive frames. For the most part, we don't, there's no disassembly day for past robots, but they do get disassembled as we need parts, and as we need stuff and frames, they do get disassembled.
For our team, kind of the same as Hayden said. The past 3 years, we've been making practice robots as well. So on top of our competition robot, we have our practice robot. And if we need to take apart those practice robots, we usually do that whenever we need we need to test this intake out with something or see if this design works. We usually feel free to take those apart. But for competition robots, we've been trying to keep them more or less intact, so we can have them to reference later on if we need to. But I know we've only started doing that the past couple of years. Before that, most of the robots got taken apart for parts and for different pieces.
We usually, not that I know of, we usually don't take apart our past robots, but when we do, they are very useful for our prototypes and our mechanisms that we might need from past games.
I just wanted to add in on our team, the past robots of our better ones that are still holding together, are often our competition bots, we do end up using as defense bots at the field to help drive our practice. So just thought of that as they were talking.
Question from Veronica Diaz. I'm assuming she's a programmer. She said, do you do any programming on day 1?
I am not personally on the programming team, but as far as I know, I think they do have some pre-started programs and like stuff from other years, but for the most part, there's not any like explicit robot program that begins on like right on day one until we have a design ready.
Pretty much exactly like what Hayden said for our team as well.
I also am not personally on the programming team, but I would assume that maybe vision programming from like vision targets, but not very likely. We'll probably have like basic like things, maybe like driving or something like that. Maybe.
We do, however, try to get our drive base built as soon as possible so that we can practice driving and practice programming with that. It's not day one, but that is the first thing that is built and programmed.
Let's look at the chat. A question from Alessandro. It says, do you guys ever test out robots from previous years off season and try to improve those ideas for possible usage on future designs? Do you guys want me to read it again, or did you got it?
You mean for like within the season, like for off-season competitions, or try to like take our 2019 robot and use it for the 2020 game kind of thing?
I think they're referring to you improve your robot in the off season, hoping that you're going to use some of those ideas for a future season.
We never plan for future seasons. Everything that happens is like we built the entire robot from scratch each season. We never, no.
We do, like Hayden was saying, we do have a lot of our driver like practice done on our last year's robot. So if there is anything that we add to like make it better so they can practice more things, we do that. But yeah, we don't think in advance because there's too many variables to try to like predict what the game is going to be. People have tried on Chief Delphi for years and can't say any of them have succeeded. So yeah.
We usually just improve for our off-season competitions. We just take the season that we just had, and we also use it for. We always save our robots for drive team training, and for those new students who might want to try out drive, might want to be on the drive team, we would also use those robots as well.
We have a question from John Chang. I believe we kind of touched on it or covered most of it already. But he asked, do you guys create profiles for robots, CAD and prototyping, on the first days? And when does that happen generally? We can cover it up really quickly because I think we touched on it earlier.
Yeah, pretty much. I think most of our teams are on the same page on this one. But for prototyping, we start like whenever we're done with like strategy and we're done with the bulk of the kickoff day. So try to bring our ideas to life. And then for CAD, we usually all start our drive bases pretty early on, but then everything else kind of has to wait for our design to kind of solidify before we start investing into it.
And then we have a comment or a prepared question. Let's see. How do you guys approach the rules manual and balance it with design on kickoff day?
The rules manual is always the first thing that we do. You have to understand the game before you can begin designing the robot. Like on our team, we go over as a team. We read the whole thing. We go through every single point. I know on the other teams, they individually go through it. We like to go through as a team so that like we get all the opinions and even the new kids can hear the experienced kids' opinions on certain rules and what's important and what's not.
We always go through the rules manual almost as soon as we're done with our kickoff event, and we go and they will drive our demand, wish, prefer requirements as just detailed. And I also kind of touched on it that we go through the rules and then we'll do a little quiz to help us understand the rules, and we'll go over the ones that have been mainly missed or ones that might have been a little challenging. and then will give us a better understanding of the rules and help us with our strategy.
On top of what Hayden and Mike already said, we do also, at the end of our going through all the rules, we have a portion where we try to pick at the rules and see if anything that other teams won't have noticed. Like I know in 2018, a big portion of our design was our climber, and we actually were able to climb from the side of the bar because we identified that it was like a square tube. Like I know a lot of the teams like didn't even notice that. So like if anyone like notices something along those lines, we always like bring it up in the end. So we keep it like fresh on top of our heads. So if we have a chance, like we usually get to capitalize on it.
Another really good way to make sure your team knows the rules is that 1678 comes out with a rules quiz each year, and you can go through that with your team. I know Mike was talking about the rules quiz. I don't know if he was talking about that one or if they made their own, but 1678 is a really good one each year.
We have another question from Rick. He said, do you do off-season projects like creating a mechanism or program you have never done before to be ready for the season? And kind of building off that, how do you guys prepare for kickoff? Do you guys do a mock kickoff day, or how do you guys really get members ready?
We try to do mock kickoffs. It's not always the most successful because we don't always have all the new kids like wanting to come, but we do try to organize one each year. We also continue our iterative design. We were testing out Swerve this off season. We're continuing to iterate and try new things in every off season on our team. It's a great opportunity in the off season competitions to try out new things, see what works without the pressure of disqualifying from Worlds or whatever.
Sometimes we challenge ourselves to create something over the summer or in the fall to like develop a concept. And sometimes we will try something that we are not comfortable with in the past and try to improve upon it so that we're more comfortable with it in the future. And like I said before, we do a mock kickoff where everyone is encouraged to come, and it helps everyone remember what we do at kickoff. It helps new students prepare for kickoff and what we do during kickoff.
In our first semester, since we're technically like classified as a class 2 in our school district, we do focus a lot of our time and energy into training different members, especially like those newer to the team, on different parts of the team. Whether like say it's someone who's interested in programming, we use that portion of our year to kind of train them up and build them up so once season comes around, they're ready. And kind of the test for all of that was the group projects that I was talking about earlier, to kind of like apply everything they've learned on like hands-on activities to hopefully like make them not only make everyone understand what like season's going to feel like, but to also be prepared. Like Hayden said, a lot of the times we might not be that used to using something or a certain mechanism, so just working on it in the off season can make it like second nature when season comes around and we know we have to do the same thing.
To build on that a little more, off-season is a great learning opportunity for a lot of newer kids. That's where we train all of the manufacturing, electronics. Up-and-coming CAD students often try to redesign parts of the robot and improve them. Sometimes they actually get put on the robot for competitions. And we also have mostly new student pit crews that they could try it out and see what it's like and see if they want to be on it during the team. So it's a very great opportunity to get newer kids involved in learning about the team.
Remember, if you guys want to ask any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We will be addressing them. We have another question. When it comes to designing or building field elements, what are the first aspects of the field that you begin building, and how do you decide which parts to build first?
We usually select the parts we'll need to use for prototyping, such as like goals, obstacles, climb components, or like game element interfaces for the robot. Sometimes we build a quick representation to support quick prototyping and then build the actual field element later. Any components that have vision targets are a priority so the programming team can get to work on recognizing the actual configuration. We plan to build the whole field worth of field elements so we can invite other teams to use our field and promote full-scale practice matches for drive team training.
I know both Code Orange and Firebots, they have full field kind of practice field. We don't really have the space and resources to make that. So what we do instead, like they were saying, we always, whatever like goal we have. So this year, we built the tall goal tower structure. We actually built it out of like last year's rocket, if you guys remember, to kind of like use resources that we had lying around. And then we made the color wheel as kind of like a mark to shoot from, and in case we decided to do it later on. And we made the human player station where we would be able to dump the balls in and out. So kind of just stuff that we needed to work with. We didn't try, and we also made our own like version of the climbing station. And it was much different than it wasn't as accurate, but the height and all that allowed us to get the prototyping and testing that we needed done. So just, even if you don't have the resources to make a whole field, it's so important to have something to go off of. Because you don't want to go into competition completely blind and be like, oh shoot, I didn't plan for this pole to be there, and have that mess up your whole plan.
We actually have two places that we build from. So while our field is at one place, we build a robot somewhere else. So for prototyping, we have to build smaller versions of the field elements, kind of like what Ali's team does. I think a really good example of what we do is in 2019, we had one level of the rocket set up, and it was just sitting on a dolly all season at the right height. We would just roll it around and test different parts of the robot at just that one height. And it had the angles right, but it wasn't a full rocket or anything large. But it was easy to work with, and it got exactly what we needed done.
Another question. When does your team start setting deadlines for themselves and planning your season schedule?
We usually start setting deadlines around the second week, but sometimes it depends on the game and how much development is up in the air. Prototypes usually start by the end of week 1 and go on to week 3 or 4 if there's a high chance of launching the game. But we usually start fabricating building before the prototyping process is over, so we usually have those deadlines by then.
Our team decides our full season schedule before the season starts, and then we adjust accordingly. But as far as when do we want things done, it's all decided pre-kickoff. Like, we know what schedule we strive for.
That's similar to us. The only difference being on the second day, so the day after kickoff, if there's any changes based on the season challenge, that's when we make all the necessary changes for the season schedule. And even if you don't like end up sticking directly to your schedule, it's really good to have as a basis, because it like motivates your team members too. A lot of the times, like when you're behind at a certain point, more people are going to be like, oh shoot, I need to put in the effort, I need to put in the time to help get us to our goal. So if you don't like kind of have a strict season schedule, I highly recommend like making one for your team.
This year, I know as part of Team 5199, we started using more conceptual 2D drawings on CAD and different programs to kind of get the geometry figured out directly from the first couple of days. Do you guys do anything similar? And how do you use CAD to develop early sketches and figure out the geometry early?
For the most part, we don't, but there's sometimes things like for our climber in 2019, we worked out exactly how long things would need to be. And actually our climber this year too, we figured out how many stages we would need and things like that in CAD, because it's just much easier and there's no point in testing with wood when you just have numbers. So anything that's strictly number based is something you would do in CAD.
For us, the biggest part that we had to kind of two-dimensionally like draw it out was our hopper. To kind of, because a lot of geometry went into that with where the balls line up and the texture of the balls, like causing them to like stick to each other. Because of that, we had to kind of dimension that very like thoroughly, like change it again by like 1 inch, like half an inch a lot of the time. So that's where we kind of put in all our numbers and then where we built off of later on.
When we do our CAD, we always have our measurements in. We always start CADing when our prototyping is done and or more or less done, and then we'll get our measurements done. And if they're off, when we 3D print them, we will try to go through those again and see what measurements are off and try to go back through those again.
Okay, we have 5 more minutes remaining in the workshop. Going on kind of along the same lines, for things that require calculations, such as the trajectory, things with the balls, do you guys use math or is it more trial and error?
Like for this year for the shooter, it was definitely a lot more trial and error because there's a lot of factors like the resistance for something as with the makeup of a dodgeball that it doesn't really follow a nice trajectory that you can just mathematically calculate. However, it is something that you can get with consistency, which allows us to program it. So we kind of have to do some reverse whatever there. So we have to see what happens and then solve it.
Yeah, once use math to get a starting point to go off of, and then from there on, it's mainly just testing it out, see how much RPM you need, how much adjustments you need on that, and you go from there.
One second. We usually get a base math, and then it'll get easier as we go along. But it is more trial and error. But when we're getting close, the math is sometimes done afterwards to see how close we can actually get to our better target.
Okay, so we got a few more questions as we wrap up. So we're going to do a little rapid fire. So we're only going to take one response for each one. Hemant asked, is there anything you prepare for before kickoff? We kind of touched on this earlier, but any other comments on that?
We kind of prepare a rundown of what we want to do for our kickoff, so everyone knows what to expect. But other than that, it all depends on what the game manual says, so we can't really prepare too much going into it.
Another rapid fire question. How do you efficiently run the following days after kickoff, such as to be as productive as possible? Also, how do you engage students in prototyping?
We split off into groups similar to the napkin sketches where we have an experienced student lead the prototyping group. And that gets the new kids involved. It gives everyone a task. When you have big groups, people get left out. So we have little groups. Each person tests one idea. What about shooting with one wheel? What about shooting with 2 wheels? What about over the top intake? Just little things with small groups to test everything.
And then another rapid fire question. Will your kickoff strategy change this year, given that the 2021 season may be similar to the 2020 season? How will it change?
For us, it definitely will. Going into it, we're planning on taking full advantage of our off-season and fine-tuning issues that we had with our robot that we saw at our first competition. And any changes that we see fit, we're gonna make that before the season. First did say that there's gonna be some few changes to the game, so it's not gonna be directly the same thing. So there will be probably some changes, but overall, our plan is to have a fully working and competitive robot going into season, and then we'll make the necessary changes from there.
And then the last question is from John Chang. Are you guys working on the robot right now, since we know that 2021 will be similar to next year's?
We are continuing to work on designs. We're not literally working on the robot because we can't meet, but we do have a lot of discussions over Slack about new designs and new CAD and what we can improve as soon as we come back.
All right, thank you, panelists. Thank you, Mike, Ollie, and Hayden. We will have to wrap up today's workshop. Special thanks to Team 3309, the Friarbots, Team 3476, Code Orange, and our own Team 5199, the Robot Dolphins from Outer Space. The summer series will continue in 5 minutes at 5:45 on the same stream, where Team Spider will host a workshop on building a brand and sponsorships. Highly recommend you tune in. They are insane at building a brand. Otherwise, please check our Instagram at Robot Dolphins for more information about the summer series and the other workshops we will be hosting throughout the week. This has been Jack Fallon from Team 5199. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you in 5 minutes.